Hello and welcome. I am Sue Rose and I work with the Department of Children, Youth and Families and the Early Support for Infants and Toddlers program. I am coming to you out of Olympia, Washington, on the lands of the Squaxin Island people. I use she, her pronouns, and I am super excited that you are all here today to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. To get us started, so we are going to we have a nice little panel here to share some insights on their experience with IDEA. And to get us started, I would like to introduce Darcy Ladwig. She is our chair for our state Interagency Coordinating Council, and she is going to read a proclamation for us. Darcy, hello and welcome, and I'll put this on the screen as well. Darcy, come on in.
Thanks, Sue. As Sue said, I'm Darcy Ladwig, and I am chair of the state ICC, and I am also the parent of an 18-year-old who has benefited from IDEA, Part C and B, and she gets to continue to go to school until she's 21 because of IDEA. And so I will get started. The State of Washington Proclamation. Whereas we celebrate 45 years of providing education, supports and services to infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities and their families through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and whereas Washington led the way for the nation with HB 90, Education for All, in 1971, that started public education as we know it today, and whereas the IDEA is a law that makes available a free, appropriate public education to eligible children with disabilities throughout the nation and ensures special education and related services to those children. And whereas an inclusive education benefits both children with and without disabilities, and whereas infants and toddlers birth through age 2 with disabilities and their families receive early intervention services under IDEA Part C, children and youth ages 3 through 21 receive special education and related services under IDEA Part B. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim the week of March 22nd, 2021 as Individuals with Disabilities Education IDEA Week in Washington, and encourage all people in our state to join me in the special observance. And it's signed by the governor, and the official copy has been sent to DCYF. And now I'm going to pass the virtual mic to Glenna Gallo, Assistant Superintendent of Special Education at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Thank you so much, Darcy. I'm Glenna Gallo, the Assistant Superintendent of Special Ed at OSPI. And during our first day of celebrating IDEA, I had an opportunity to speak about the history of IDEA. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach and look more at celebrations due to IDEA. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Superintendent Chris Reichdahl.
Oh, great. Thank you, Glenn. It's good to see everybody on the screen. These are the moments we live for. Great celebration, incredible recognition of the work of so many leaders across the country and in our state. And Glenna, for us, is a hero in our organization, as is Tanya and so many others. But doing it on Zoom is something we're ready to be done with. I think we're all ready for that. I am ready to move on to lots more human interaction for sure, certainly when it's safe, without a doubt. So the IDEA is a powerful force. And I think as you sort of observe it around the country, you certainly get a different sense of how different states embrace the work. We've had our weaknesses in this state for sure, and I think also some real achievements. And the whole development of DCYF, partnered with OSPI and higher education, you begin to see a picture here where we can really work together and collaboratively, and have been, on really a comprehensive set of services and supports for students from birth really all the way to post-school transition. This year, we hope, is an opportunity to push that age 21 out at least a year and begin that larger conversation of expanded supports and services. And a lot of you know that the work that sort of is ancillary and that wraps around that, things like multi-tiered systems of support, the inclusionary practices, professional learning that's going on. These are all parts that I think paint a more comprehensive picture of how best to support students and families and center the work on individuals, as opposed to just systems constantly putting broad programs together. The whole idea of NTSS is really thinking about the individual needs of students beyond academic. So behavioral supports, social emotional supports, inclusive of families, thinking about how to then align the school system with comprehensive supports that's also tailored through the individualized learning program for students. It gives us a huge opportunity to think about this thing 45 years later that started as a really powerful, positive civil rights action in the country, to how do states and school districts and actual classrooms ultimately function when we do it really well. So again, my huge thank you to the partners in the work, to all of you who have been kind of on the edge of innovation on this. And I know there is so much more that many of you want to do to support the work here 45 years later. Let us not take 45 more years to get to some of the really, really powerful things we have learned, to get to the robust UDL, and not the stuff that's just starting to scratch that surface, but really powerful things that allow us to think about this learning for students and then bring it to larger populations as well. So you all are amazing. This is a great time for celebration. I do wish we were in person together. That will happen at some point for sure. But I'm also reminded how much our students need the love and protection and sort of concentrated effort to make sure that when we are back more consistently, that it's really safe and sustainable for them. So thank you for your advocacy. Congratulations to all the practitioners and advocates and parents. And here's to the next 45 years that I hope is exponential in its support for students with disabilities. Thanks, everyone. I'm turning it over to Bill.
I'm gonna jump in here just really quickly. My name is Lance Morehouse. Thank you, Chris, and it is my pleasure to announce Bill Dussault and the special guest, it looks like. So Bill is a practicing attorney in Seattle, has been named a super lawyer and an award of merit from the State Bar Association. That's what his bio says on the website. Now, I know Bill as a special ed and disability rights advocate and original author of House Bill 90, Education for All. So thank you, Bill, for taking the time to join us today.
Let me unmute, learning Zoom from a distance. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Superintendent, Sue Rose, all of the people on the screen, thank you for being here. This is a wonderful time to celebrate, an opportunity to look back a little bit and see where we've come from and be so enthused about where we can still go. It's an incredible story, really one that started in early 1970 when 4 amazing women from Seattle, Washington, decided that it was not right for their children not to be allowed to go to public school. They refused to take that as an answer. All three of them had children with pretty significant disabilities. All 3 had been refused public education. There was no mandatory special education in the state of Washington in 1971. In fact, there was no mandatory special education in the United States in 1971. I can look at the faces and the hair color on some of us on this screen, and I can recognize that 1971 isn't all that long ago for some of us. The fact is that those 4 amazing women decided to change the way the world treated individuals who experienced disabilities. They traveled the state. I'd encourage you to look at the Everett Herald story on 4 women traveling the state in a Volkswagen microbus as they went to meetings all over the state. to establish a law based upon the Constitution, Article 9, Section 2 of the state constitution, that required the state's paramount duty to educate all children, hence the term education for all. And I want to remind you that before the name of the federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was changed in 1990, the federal law was called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, and it was expressly and specifically named after our Washington law, the Education for All law, that was passed and became initially effective in 1971 to be affected by school districts in 1973. I am so pleased and so honored to introduce you to one of those four women who is still with us today. A woman whose modesty is truly amazing given what she has accomplished with her three friends. I want to shout out to Evelyn Chapman, Cecile Lindquist, and Katie Dolan, who have passed. Three women of education for all. But more importantly, I want to shout out to Janet Taggart, our fourth Education for All leader, who on my screen of a whole bunch of squares is just down there to the left. And I'm just going to ask Janet to say a few words. We don't have a lot of time, Janet, but what are your thoughts on the 45th anniversary of IDEA and actually the 50th anniversary of Education for All?
I have some few words written that I was going to start off with, but you covered a lot of that. You've identified us. And I wanted to talk about the history a little bit, because up to the point of 1970, children with disabilities were regularly discriminated against and denied entry into the public school system. And so the four of us were motivated by our children. In the case of Cecile, it was a cousin who had the disability. All were denied entry into our neighborhood schools. And after much conversation between us, we decided that a law was the answer to the problem. We sought the help of two law students at the University of Washington. Bill was one and George Burke was the other, who put the idea of a mandatory law into the form of law that required for going into the political and legislative system. And Bill was right. Crisscrossing the state in Bill's van, we visited dozens of organizations and presented our plan to educators, political figures, and parents, particularly the Mothers Club at Northwest Center, who were our primary supporters, until the bill was introduced for passage in the state legislature. The six of us maintained a presence in Olympia for the entire session, monitoring the journey of the bill, House Bill 90, until it reached the desk of Governor Dan Evans, who signed it into law. Bill mentioned that Washington was the first state to develop and pass such a law. Other states soon followed, but we differed in many respects. Ours contained a budget request to help the school districts implement the law, which helped to ease the acceptance of a new population. Our law became the model for the federal law. It also took our name. The six of us, the name from the state preamble, Education for All. We were contacted by the office of Senator Ted Kennedy to a meeting in his office to describe our bill's purpose and passage. With the support of Senator Warren Magnuson, who was chairman of the U.S. Appropriations Committee, the law now mandated that the entire country would provide free public school entry and education to children with disabilities. As to what needs to be done, we recently witnessed an effort to eliminate the protections for people with disabilities. Fortunately, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had placed those protections in the 14th Amendment. And what will we have to do? We will have to protect our law, and we will have to protect our children from this point on. Back to you, Bill.
Thanks, Janet. I think today is a day to reflect on that history, to understand that this was, on paper, an education law, but at foundation, a civil rights law. What we're really trying to accomplish is respect. The opportunity for individuals who experience disabilities to participate meaningfully in day-to-day activities that many of us take for granted. Respect for individuals who are labeled as being different, when in fact, they may not be all that different at all. Given an opportunity, they have the chance to succeed, to marry, to have a family, to be employed, to be engaged in our communities. This is a celebration for us, Janet and I see Stacey on the line and others. It's a celebration of 50 years of effort, of special education due process cases, of challenges for individuals, of writing additional legislation, of fighting for budgets, a 50-year fight of advocacy that hasn't changed. It's still there. The passage of the bill only established a foundation that is only as good as the advocacy we bring to it on a day-to-day basis. And without that advocacy, this bill is meaningless. We have to be there. We have to celebrate our accomplishments. That's legitimate. But we have to bring the fight again and again to the fore, because our children, our young adults, are still unemployed, still living in congregate housing, still dying because their housing exposes them to COVID. We need to maintain that spirit of celebration to move forward so that House Bill 90, an idea, is a floor of opportunity, but not a ceiling. We haven't reached the ceiling yet. That's enough preaching. It is time for a celebration of those 50 years. And thank you all for being willing to listen to two old timers on the screen.
Thank you both very much for spending your time with us today. It was great that you could join Janet. And now we're going to shift to Jola.
Hello, everyone, and happy spring. I'm Jola Brown, ESIT Stakeholder Engagement Specialist, and I have a little presentation to share. Okay. My main inspiration and the one who got me where I am today working in early intervention is my younger brother. Meet my brother, Nathan. Nathan was born February 7th, 1998. As a toddler, he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and pervasive developmental disorder, PDD. We noticed that Nathan was showing signs of delay as a baby when he was late to start walking and struggled with basic speech. It became clear he had alternative learning needs. He started receiving relief services from the Washington State Division of Developmental Disabilities at a young age. Nathan was enrolled in special classes and received an aid in school for extra support to help him learn at his own pace. As a kid, Nathan developed a love for KidPix, a 90s bitmap computer drawing program. He's always loved art, movies, singing, dancing, musicals, and his favorite celebrity is Elvis. When Nathan was between the ages 11 and 16, I was certified as one of his respite providers, so I could be involved with his care as well as encourage his creative learning. To this day, Nathan is a prolific artist. He uses his iPad and stylus to create expressive, high-quality digital art. He also was well-versed in traditional drawing methods and likes using his whiteboard, coloring, and drawing on paper. With the help and support of disability services, his family and community, Nathan excelled in school, and he graduated the summer of 2019 from Eisenhower High School in Yakima, Washington. Apparently, he was super popular too. For his campus job, he helped deliver the mail all over campus, so everyone knew who he was. He also appeared in his yearbook several times. Nathan stayed in high school until he was 21 years old. Our parents and his teachers made sure his aid was the same aid throughout his high school experience. Here's a picture of him with his aid over to the side here. His aide was someone Nathan really looked up to. It made a big difference for Nathan to have healthy representation in his education and receive support and guidance from a role model he could relate to, a Black man. Nathan benefited from the extra years in school for vocational training on campus and in the community. And here's some pictures. Here's my mom with Nathan, and here's me. It is clear that with unconditional love and support, Nathan lives a joyful, full life. He uses his free time to be creative, make art, and spend time with our family. When it comes to potential, it's all about what Nathan can do, nurturing his endless creative genius and helping him learn. Today, Nathan has a part-time job in a group setting that he will return to when it is safe. He lives with our parents in Yakima as he still needs help day to day due to a speech delay and PDD. He still receives part-time respite services as he and our family still need the support. Nathan is a confident, happy, outgoing people person. He has a smile for everyone. He loves to continue learning, creating, connecting, and practicing self-sufficient routines with the help of his family, friends, and aides. And it's all thanks to IDEA. And to just give some context, we are both mixed. We're both half Black, Lebanese, and a little bit Caucasian. We both have really dark curly hair, and we're light skinned, and we both smile a lot. Thank you.
Nice job, Jala. Thank you so much. This is Sue Rose. Okay, who's up next?
I do believe that is me. Hi all, my name is Tanya Cochran. I'm a special education teacher in the White Salmon School District and a member of the Special Education Advisory Council. The Special Education Advisory Council is established through the Individuals with Disability Act, or IDEA. This council is made up of many different individuals. These individuals could be parents of a student with a disability, special education administrators, special education teachers, professors and administrators of higher institutions, and other agencies that represent the state, cultural diversity, the ESIT, and other populations that are all stakeholders. The Special Education Advisory Council looks at data that has been presented to OSPI, as well as the policies, procedures, and practices in special education, and makes recommendations to Superintendent Rickdale. Superintendent Rickdale is responsive and values the opinions of the council. We have presented recommendations and opinions on legislation, budget, and other topics. Other topics that we have presented recommendations for are inclusion and equity, special education funding, training for pre-service and in-service teachers, and family and community involvement, to name a few. If you're interested in joining the Special Education Advisory Committee Council, or would like to see some of the position papers that we have presented to Superintendent Reckdale, I'll put the link in the chat. As a special education teacher, IDEA has established meaningful educational experiences for all of my students from kindergarten to age 21. And with that, so to talk about IDEA and our transition program for students who are age 18 to 21, I will now pass the mic to Tanya May.
Thanks, Tanya. You get 2 Tanyas for the price of 1 today.
Yay!
My name's Tanya May, and I'm the Director of Special Education here at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. I'm also the parent of a 7th grader with autism who receives services through an IEP. And I'm kind of outing myself here, but I will share with you all that I'll be turning 45 this May. So it's pretty exciting that I share a birth year with IDEA. Part of my role includes a focus on secondary transition for students with disabilities. These students are working toward graduation, they're shaping their post-secondary goals, and they're preparing for their next steps after high school. William Bridges, who was a great thinker on organizational change, once said that while change is situational, transition involves redefining oneself. There isn't any one of us who hasn't experienced significant changes over this past year. We carry with us stories of loss, but also so many stories of resiliency and innovation. Our students, our families, and our transition partners have all learned new skills, new terms, right? Synchronous and asynchronous, and new approaches to building and sustaining community. I truly believe that transition and inclusion are lifelong efforts, and they form a foundation to support competitive, integrated employment. Research and experience have taught us the activities that help our students make a successful transition to adult life. These predictors of post-school success include career exploration, work experience, meaningful inclusion, family involvement, self-determination, and interagency collaboration. And I want to pause here and say that last part again. Collaboration is the key. Across IEP teams that include our students and families, across our schools, providers, and agencies, we can best meet the needs of our students and families when we all work together. I have learned so much from these partners in transition, and I truly believe it has helped me become a more thoughtful educator and a stronger advocate. Several cross-agency and cross-partner transition initiatives are focusing on this collaboration. These include our Inclusionary Practices Project, the Job Foundation Project, Career Connect Washington, the Transition Services Assessment Tool that helps inform pre-employment transition services, School to Work, and High School and Beyond Plan case studies, to name just a few of these. We also know that there is so much more work to do. At the end of 2020, our statewide cross-agency transition collaborative submitted a report to the state legislature with recommendations and resources that are needed to meet the transition needs of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And as part of this 2021 legislative session, OSPI is focused on 3 budget priorities to support all students, including those preparing for their post-school lives. The first is continuing our statewide Inclusionary Practices Project for an additional 2 years and adding our preschoolers so that we can truly support inclusion across ages 3 to 21. The second is offering extended transition services beyond age 21. Superintendent Reckdale talked about this a little bit ago. This would help our students with disabilities who missed or received limited transition supports over this past school year or through this school year. And finally, we hope to hire a second family and community liaison to support with guidance to families and our community partners. As we make this transition into our new normal, we have so much on which to reflect. If change is situational and transition is an opportunity to redefine ourselves, how can we take this chance to carry forward the lessons learned over this past year? If we center equity and inclusion, shared decision-making, person-centered planning, and innovative ways of connecting and learning, we can realize our goals of a seamless transition from school to post-school life for each and every student. Thank you so much for joining us today and for this chance to share with you some updates and priorities for successful transition. With that, I'll turn it back over to Sue Rose.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panelists today. This has been phenomenal, and we are actually ahead of schedule. And so before I stop the recording, did any of our panelists want to jump in and say anything before we move into the next portion, which is called the social half hour, where we can mingle together? But did any of our panelists want to say any closing remarks before I stop the recording?
I would like to relate the benefit of House Bill 90 for my daughter. Some of the people who wrote and lobbied and successfully lobbied the bill did not benefit from its accomplishments. It was too late. They had outgrown the opportunity to take advantage of the law. They had reached the age of 21 and over. But Nada profited from it. And at the age of 12, she went into the public school system. And it was the best of times for our family and for her. And she became a regular student. She got in line with the tray for lunchtime. My husband, her dad, my husband, had some accounts in that area, in the school area, and sometimes would join her and have lunch with her. And she would giggle and say, look embarrassed and say, that's my dad. And she profited so much. She gained so many friends. She had so many opportunities for growth. And so the proof was there. We knew we did the right thing because she became a regular kid. Thank you for that opportunity.
And this is Stacey Dim. If I could just say a quick thank you to Bill Dussault. I don't know how many people know, but Bill Dussault is my mentor. I started working for him when I was very young. My children were just early born and they're in their 30s now. And I know everything I know about the IDEA thanks to Bill Dussault. I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't decided to be that young law student who was going to make a difference. I know it made a difference for my sister, who is 55 now and did benefit from the law, but she was in high school when IDEA came to life. And I can remember the day that I was driving in the car with my mom and my sister with a developmental disability, and she heard the announcement on the radio and said, we have to hurry up and get a lawyer so that she can get in school. And that's what it was like in the 70s for children with significant disabilities. She went to my same high school, but I never saw her. She was always in a portable, but she did learn to read, and she was able to be in an inclusion program in Kirkland in the Lake Washington School District, and they did right by her in the end. But it's in my lifetime. This is in my lifetime that this happened. So I think we always have to remember how far we've come in a very short period of time. And I just want to say how grateful I am to Janet Taggart and to Bill Dussault for their role in that.
If I can remember just one more advocate that was among your group, Cecile was my mentor and got me into this role. So I just want to mention Cecile and not only her efforts with House Bill 90, but sticking with it for 3 to 5 year olds to be included, and then moving on to early intervention. That is part of the reason we have the early intervention programs that we have today in our state. And Janet, I don't know if you ever got to meet Hazel Venables from up north here, but she started Sherwood as an education program. And I'm now the CEO of Sherwood, and I'm very proud to carry on her legacy that she started this agency with.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. Okay, this is Sue Rose. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. This has been wonderful.